I still remember the day my grandfather handed me his worn copy of The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. He'd served in the British Army, just like his father before him. Looking at the ancient battle illustrations, I asked him, "Pop, who would have won if these two worlds ever collided?" He smiled, the kind of smile that comes with age. That's the question that haunts every historian, isn't it? Rome, where men with nothing but iron and courage carved out the ancient world's greatest empire. Britain, where industrial might and naval power painted the map red across continents our Roman ancestors couldn't even imagine existed. These weren't just empires on paper. They were millions of ordinary people, farmers, blacksmiths, mothers, whose blood and sweat built something that touched every corner of their known world. When I stand in the Roman Colosseum today, I can almost hear the echoes of cheering crowds. When I walk through London's Imperial War Museum, I feel the weight of an empire that stretched across oceans. Today, we're tearing down the barrier of time to witness what history never gave us, the ultimate clash of civilizations. Two empires that never met but shaped everything about our world. What happens when disciplined legions that conquered on foot meet the technological terror of machine guns and artillery? When ancient tactics face modern strategy? This isn't just about who would win a battle. This is about understanding the very foundations of power, innovation, and what truly makes an empire immortal. Let's get started. Setting the stage. To pit these titans against one another, we first have to understand them not just as names in textbooks, but as living, breathing empires at the height of their power. Before imagining the clash, we must first walk their streets, feel their pulse, and see the world through Roman and British eyes. Imagine standing in the Roman Forum in 117 CE. The marble gleams under the Mediterranean sun as merchants from 3 continents haggle in dozens of languages. A senator walks past, his toga brushing against a Syrian spice trader. This is the beating heart of an empire stretching across 5 million square kilometers, from the misty hills of northern Britain to the burning sands of Mesopotamia. In the modest apartment blocks of Rome, a mother prepares her son for military service, one of 70 million souls under Roman rule, 21% of humanity breathing under the shadow of imperial eagles. Her tears are shared by countless families across 113 provinces united by Roman roads, Roman law, and Roman swords. Now, the mists of time part to reveal London, 1922. Big Ben chimes as a colonial administrator reviews maps showing British red spanning 23% of Earth's land surface. In a dock nearby, a merchant ship unloads tea from India, gold from Africa, and wool from Australia. The lifeblood of an empire connecting 458 million people across 35.5 million square kilometers. 2 empires, one ancient, one industrial, both built by the sweat and sacrifice of millions. When Trajan conquered Dacia, he celebrated with games that killed 11,000 animals and gladiators. When Britain secured its empire, it controlled 800,000 miles of telegraph cable that could send messages around the world in hours. Behind these staggering imperial achievements were ordinary people with hopes and fears just like yours. The Roman farmer sending his son to distant Judea, never knowing if he'd return. The British mother watching her boy board a transport to the northwest frontier. 2 empires separated by millennia, but united by human ambition and human cost. These titans never met on history's stage, but today, we erase the centuries between them to witness the ultimate clash of civilizations. The Roman war machine. Now that we've stood at the center of both empires, it's time to look beyond their borders, to the engines that fueled expansion and enforced control. First, we journey into the beating heart of Roman might, the disciplined, unyielding war machine that shaped the ancient world. The ground trembles beneath 5,500 synchronized footsteps. This is Legion 20th Valeria Victrix, not just soldiers, but a human machine forged through brutal training and iron discipline. These men march 20 miles daily, carrying 60-pound packs before building a fortified camp each night, a routine unmatched by any army for 1,000 years. Centurion Marcus Faustus didn't earn his vine staff by birth or wealth, but by surviving 17 battles across 3 continents. His calloused hands gripped the gladius, the 24-inch blade that conquered the world through not reach or power, but precision and coordination. When these men lock their scuda shields, they become something greater than individuals, a moving fortress that crushed Carthage, Gaul, and Judea alike. While Greek armies relied on phalanxes and Persian forces on archery, Rome mastered the art of military engineering. Their Scorpion ballistas could pin an enemy to his shield at 300 yards. Siege engines like the Corvus turned naval battles into infantry engagements where Roman discipline prevailed. Emperor Augustus maintained 28 standing legions, nearly 150,000 professional soldiers ready at a moment's notice. "Tell little Marcus I'll return before he's old enough for his toga virilis," writes a legionary from distant Germania. Many never saw their promised discharge after 25 years, or their promised land grant of 12 acres. Yet they built an empire where Pax Romana meant a traveler could journey from Scotland to Syria without ever leaving Roman protection. What truly separated Rome from its enemies wasn't iron or leather, but the transformation of farmers into professional killers through systems perfected over centuries. Every legion carried its own engineers, medics, and quartermasters, a self-contained war machine that could build bridges across the Rhine in days or roads that still stand 2 millennia later. This was Rome's true genius, turning men into limestone, flesh into fortress walls, creating an empire built not just by conquering other peoples, but by ultimately transforming them into Romans too. British imperial might. But just as Rome turned men into machines, the British Empire turned machines into the instruments of empire. As we move forward in time, discipline gives way to industrial scale, and conquest becomes a matter of iron, steam, and empire-wide coordination. The Ocean Spray crashes against 18,000 tons of British engineering, HMS Dreadnought, the warship that made all others obsolete overnight. This single vessel could unleash more firepower than entire ancient fleets, her 10 12-inch guns hurling 850-pound shells accurately across 16 miles of open water. Not just a weapon, but a statement cast in steel. Britannia rules the waves. By 1914, Britain's naval supremacy meant 524 warships patrolled an empire where the sun truly never set, controlling key strategic points. Gibraltar, Suez, Singapore, Malta. The Royal Navy could strangle any rival's trade routes while protecting the 20 million tons of shipping that carried imperial goods annually. The Romans called the Mediterranean our sea. The British made every ocean their own. While Rome's strength came from human discipline, Britain's power emerged from furnace and forge. In Manchester's textile mills, Sheffield's steel works, and Birmingham's factories, Britain produced more industrial output than the entire Roman economy many times over. A single British factory could manufacture 1,500 Lee Enfield rifles daily, each capable of firing 15 aimed rounds per minute, creating a wall of lead no ancient formation could penetrate. Beyond technology lay Britain's most potent weapon, an imperial system that could draw soldiers and resources from 6 continents. When the empire called, 2.5 million Indian soldiers answered during World War I. Canadian wheat, Australian wool, African gold, and Malayan rubber fueled the imperial machine. The Union Jack flew over 1/4 of humanity, a tapestry of peoples both exploited by and invested in imperial power. In the War Office, strategic plans reflected a new kind of warfare. Submarine telegraph cables transmitted orders at light speed to commanders 7,000 miles away. Railways moved troops and supplies at 60 miles per hour. The British soldier may have lacked the Romans' brutal hand-to-hand prowess, but carried something far deadlier, the Maxim machine gun, capable of firing 600 rounds per minute. A weapon so devastating that Hilaire Belloc grimly observed, "Whatever happens, we have got the Maxim gun, and they have not." For all this mechanical might, empire still ran on human courage and sacrifice. Each telegram bringing news of a son lost in some distant corner of the map carried the true cost of global dominion, a price paid not in Whitehall, but in the farming villages of Yorkshire, the tenements of Glasgow, and the colonial outposts from Kenya to Burma. The hypothetical conflict. So, with 2 empires fully formed, one forged by iron discipline, the other by industrial dominance, we now dare to ask the unthinkable. What if these civilizations could face one another? What would happen if Rome's gladius met Britain's Maxim gun? As our empires collide across the boundaries of time, the Mediterranean becomes ground zero, where Roman dominance first flourished and where British naval power would later assert its will. The conflict begins where these titans share geography: the shores of Egypt, the hills of Palestine, the waters off Hispania. The opening naval engagement tells a brutal story of technological evolution. Rome's naval strength, nearly 1,000 vessels at its height, relied on bronze rams and boarding parties. The average Roman quinquereme, powered by 300 oarsmen, could achieve 7 knots at full sprint. Against it, a single British pre-dreadnought cruiser, moving at 25 knots under steam power, carries guns that can obliterate Roman vessels before they close within a mile. For Admiral Quintus Valerius, watching from the Carthaginian shoreline as British shells plunge through wooden decks from impossible distances, the cruel truth of time's passage becomes clear. The empire that conquered Mare Nostrum now finds itself imprisoned by it, unable to project power beyond shores controlled by steel monsters spewing fire and smoke. On land, the confrontation turns more complex. A British battalion of 600 men with 6 Vickers machine guns can fire 36,000 rounds per minute, more projectiles than 10,000 Roman archers. British artillery fires shells containing explosive power that would seem like Jupiter's thunderbolts to ancient minds. Chemical weapons deployed during the Great War would render Roman armor useless. Yet, Romans were history's great adapters. When they encountered Carthaginian navy, they built their own. When they faced Parthian cavalry, they developed countermeasures. The empire that constructed 250,000 miles of roads, 40,000 miles of aqueducts, and concrete structures that still stand after 2 millennia would not surrender to technological superiority without attempting to understand and replicate it. The true advantage Rome holds lies in manpower and logistics. Emperor Trajan could theoretically field armies numbering in the millions. Roman engineers could construct siege works around British positions within days. And unlike modern armies dependent on complex supply chains, Roman legions could live off the land, constructing fortified camps each night as they slowly enveloped British colonial outposts. The conflict becomes a race against time. Britain must capitalize on its overwhelming firepower before Romans can adapt. Roman generals, facing devastating casualties, abandon frontal assaults for what they do best: engineering and siegecraft. Trenches, once used by Romans at Alesia in 52 BCE to defeat the Gauls, become their answer to machine gun fire. The human toll mounts on both sides. British troops, accustomed to colonial wars against poorly equipped opponents, face an enemy with centuries of disciplined warfare in its blood. Roman soldiers, taught to fear nothing in this world or the next, encounter weapons that transform battlefield courage from virtue to futility. Deciding factors. As the dust of battle settles and the scale of devastation becomes clear, the question becomes more complex. War isn't just about strength. It's about endurance, adaptability, and the ability to sustain a campaign across vast distances and time. And here, the hidden levers of power come into focus. The fate of empires often hinges not on battlefield glory, but on the unglamorous business of supply. A Roman legion consumed 6,000 pounds of grain daily, moved by ox carts traveling 15 miles per day along precisely engineered roads. Impressive for its era, until you witness a single British steam locomotive pulling 50 times that weight at 4 times the speed. The railroad, 70,000 miles of British track by 1914, shrinks distance in ways Romans could scarcely comprehend. When Emperor Hadrian faced rebellion in Britannia in 122 CE, news took 2 weeks to reach Rome. When rebellion erupted in India in 1857, London received word in hours through 30,000 miles of submarine telegraph cable. Romans commanded with scroll and seal. Britons with instantaneous coded messages spanning continents. In war, information becomes more precious than gold, and moves at the speed of electricity instead of horseflesh. The Roman centurion knew every man under his command by name. 100 faces, 100 stories. The British officer commanded through organizational structures handling millions of imperial subjects. When Field Marshal Kitchener called for volunteers in 1914, he could raise 1 million men in 8 weeks. The British industrial machine could equip them with 250,000 rifles monthly, production volumes that would leave Roman arsenals in awe. Yet cold statistics fail to capture the Roman fighting spirit, men who would rather die than retreat, who built an empire through collective determination as much as military innovation. The average legionary trained 6 hours daily for years, creating muscle memory and unit cohesion rarely matched in history. When Caesar's outnumbered 10th Legion held against overwhelming nervy forces, they demonstrated something statistics cannot measure. Britain's ultimate advantage lay not just in technology, but in imperial infrastructure. The empire that controlled 1/4 of Earth's land surface had mastered governance at distance, creating systems to extract resources and maintain control across vast territories. Their colonial model turned local populations into administrative assets, something Rome pioneered but Britain perfected on a global scale. Both empires understood that lasting power comes through cultural transformation, changing how conquered peoples live, think, and define themselves. Romans brought urban planning, legal systems, and Latin. Britons brought parliamentary structures, industrial methods, and English. The empire that endures isn't just the one that wins battles, but the one whose ideas reshape how humanity organizes itself. In our hypothetical war, the industrial capacity gap proves insurmountable. Britain's annual steel production of 10 million tons in 1914, against Rome's estimated 82,500 tons, represents a difference so vast it transcends military strategy. No matter how brilliant Trajan's generals, no ancient tactical genius could overcome disparity measured not in percentages but in magnitudes. Conclusion. In the end, beyond the bullets and blades, what lasts is not just military might, but the legacies these empires leave behind. Let's step back from the battlefield and ask the deeper questions history demands of us. In our hypothetical war, British technological superiority would likely prove decisive against Roman military prowess. The gap of nearly 2 millennia of technological development simply presents too great an advantage. Yet both Rome and Britain remind us how quickly the mighty can fall. Rome's concrete structures still stand after 2,000 years. The British parliamentary system continues to influence governments worldwide long after its empire faded. Perhaps the most important question isn't who would win this impossible battle, but what these empires teach us about power, human achievement, and the impermanence of even the greatest civilizations. The real victors of history aren't those who conquer the most territory, but those whose ideas and values outlive their empires. What would you fight for? What would you build that could stand the test of time? Comment below with your thoughts on this clash of titans that history never gave us. And if you enjoyed this journey through time, remember to subscribe for more historical what-ifs that challenge everything you thought you knew about the past.